a joint deep down in my heart. I'm waking up with your love from the start. I'm chasing the rainbow through the rain. I know it's gonna be a beautiful day.
When walking through life, you never know who's just around the next corner that's going to change your life. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coffee, Conversations of Friends of Faith to encourage and equip. I'm Kim Crabill, so delighted to meet you right here in this time, in this space, to bring to you some of the most incredible people that I meet in my world. And they inspire me, and I know they will inspire you. You know, recently I was at a conference and we were just walking through, my friend Jen and I were walking through, and we were just talking about all the incredible people that we were meeting and seeing. And all of a sudden I looked up and I saw this person. I said, oh my goodness, he looks like he'd be so much fun. And I want to meet him. I want to talk to him. I want to know his story. Who knew that it was Zoro? Oh my goodness. And let me tell you, this man has the greatest faith, the greatest story, most inspiring, fun, light. I don't know. I could go on and on with just the words that I would use to describe him, even though I truly barely know him. But isn't it true that when believers come together, automatically you feel like you've known each other for a long time? And with that, I want to bring in my new friend. And I know it's going to be your new friend, Zoro. Zoro, come on in. Hello, buddy.
Kim, that was one of the sweetest, most beautiful introductions I've ever received in my life. That was amazing. Really
Well,
touched me.
it was from my heart.
I know it was.
It was from my heart, and I meant every word of it. I have never met anybody that just is so filled with wanting to love others and spread Jesus. And the more I read, and look who you are. I mean, we're going to get into all that. I mean, what you've accomplished, what you've done with your life, where you came from, your mom, so many wonderful things, Zoro. And I am so delighted that you wrote this book that I'm going to, we will show up on the big screen and have lots of ways for people to get it. Maria's Scarf, but that's about your mom. But let's first just start with you, Zoro. Your name is Zoro your given name?
Well, that's a great question to start off with. So Zorro is not my given name, other than the fact that I gave it to myself. So it is given a gift from me to me. But really, when people read my memoir, Maria's Scarf, they'll learn what my real name is. And I won't reveal it yet because it'll be a bit more fun to discover it. And then it's really about how this kid, my birth name, eventually becomes Zorro. But the way that it sort of came about is that I grew up in the early part of my life in the South Central Los Angeles area known as Compton, otherwise known as the Hood. And so I grew up in kind of a rough, dodgy area. And, you know, I was about 7 years old. It was just sort of kid shenanigans. But some of the older cohorts in the neighborhood kind of talked me into going into the liquor stores and snitching some candy and some bubble gum and some things. And so I wanted to please my heroes, the older crowd around me, and win them over. So I went in there, but I didn't want to get caught. So I thought that if I just wore a Zorro mask, that no one would recognize me. Not realizing that I had a big old cowlick like alfalfa, that they would know who I am in a heartbeat. But I'm 7 years old, so I go in there and I snitch the candy with the Zorro mask, and that's kind of how the whole thing started. And then when I was a little bit older, when I got my first big gig with the New Edition in 1985, they were a huge pop R&B group, sort of like the Jackson 5. I had been wearing my Zorro hat that I got with my mother at Alvera Street, like in Mexico, in downtown LA. Anyway, so I was wearing the Zorro's hat, and she said, "You should call yourself Zorro because you're like the real Zorro, that you always had a heart for the underdog," which is very true. I always had a heart. Like Zorro was like Robin Hood, he robbed from the rich to give to the poor, and in a way, I kind of always had that spirit. So what started off really at 7 years old wearing this Zorro plastic, the Halloween plastic mask that we would wear. That's
Yeah.
how it all started. And then eventually, once she said, "You should call yourself Zorro," and she suggested I spell it with one R instead of two to set myself apart. I adopted that. I'm half Mexican because she was from Mexico City. So I was like, it lines up with my heritage. I like the vibe. I'm going with that. And then I legally became Zorro after that and have never turned and looked back.
Oh my gosh, what a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That is great. You know, I want my audience to know, um, I wanna go back to your beginnings, but Zorro, you have spent 4 decades performing with artists such as Lenny Kravitz. I've interviewed his sister, Bobby Brown, Frankie Valli, the Four Seasons, all as a drummer, right?
Yes. So I have spent, so just for the people out there who have no idea who is Zorro. So I am a drummer,
Mm,
and I have played, like you said, for 40 years. I have toured with everyone from Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, Bobby Brown, Lenny Kravitz, New Edition, Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind and Fire, lots and lots of different people, Lincoln Brewster, Phil Kagi, lots of Christian people. But I have been a drummer around the world. I've also been an author. I've written first wrote 4 best-selling drum books on the history of R&B drumming that sort of became method books that were used in all the colleges. Then I wrote a couple of motivational books, and I wrote one Christian book called Soar, which is about how to live out God's dream for your life. So
mm,
those were all the things. And then I've been a preacher. I was on staff at a mega church in Northern California for 5 years as a pastor, as one of the pastors there. But I've been an evangelist for 40 years around the world, speaking at prisons. I've been everywhere from Folsom Prison to San Quentin Prison to underprivileged city schools to churches to conferences to Hollywood parties to Grammys to traveling with the 4th richest guy in the world, Paul Allen. So the Lord has really sent me absolutely everywhere on the earth, from the poorest of the poor to the richest of the rich. But I'm the same guy going through every door. I'm an evangelist by nature. I love to bring people to the kingdom of God. And all of those things in my career were just a means of which to connect with people. And
mm.
there were means of which God fulfilled his vision and purpose for my life, which was to, when I was 12 years old, I wanted to be a drummer and I wanted to be a preacher. And God fulfilled all those things together in a very unique blend that no one would suspect looking at me.
You know, I hear everything that you've done and everything that you've accomplished and the heart that you have for the Lord. I can't believe that I turned around that corner and I didn't recognize you, that I didn't know you. I should have known you. I don't know. I guess being the drummer back there, I don't know, but boy, the discovery was great and all for my benefit. And I'm just so honored. Thank you. I don't know if I even said thank you for allowing us to have this time to visit with you, but for my audience, it is a great honor. And for me, it's even a double honor, Zorro. And I just thank you so much for that. And just for your heart. You know,
Thank
you reached the height of gosh, all of these people, all of this, I read in the book where you would look out and see thousands of people as
you. Yeah.
you were performing for them. But your life didn't start out like that, did it?
No, no. So people will understand the backstory and why I wrote Maria's Scarf, the memoir
Mm,
that's a tribute to my mother, is
mm,
that I was raised in a single parent home. My mother, Maria, was from Mexico City. She raised 7 children alone. There was no fathers in the scene. There were no relatives in the scene. So she had this enormous task of taking care of her children alone in a foreign land. And by the time I was in the 4th grade, we moved 30 to 40 times. Sometimes with my radio Red Flyer wagon, we would literally load up our stuff and moved on to the next apartment because we didn't have money or a car for a U-Haul. We didn't have money for a U-Haul, or we didn't have a car. So I had a very rough upbringing. I was rejected by my father, abandoned me when I was about 6 months. And the only thing he left me, this is just how God does stuff. Um, God is always has a way of creating poetic justice. But the only thing he left me was a set of bongos, which he left by accident. And there's a picture in my memoir of the bongos dangling underneath my infant feet.
yeah,
Who knew that that would be my destiny? You know, and
right.
so God had a plan all along. But
Mm,
so I had this, and then I had sent him letters throughout my life, but he never responded. So I grew up with this incredible sense of rejection and just instability, and being half Mexican and half Irish. Then we moved up to Grants Pass, Oregon, which was a completely different, a rural area where we weren't liked because my mother was Mexican. So I experienced a lot of different things in my life, from poverty and pain and hunger and racism. But God was in the story the whole time, and God's miracles were always performed in our life. And my mother had this stalwart faith, and she just never gave up and always trusted in the Lord, which is why I wrote Maria's Scarf, to inspire and encourage every mother out there that no matter what you're going through, every parent, father or mother, feels the same way. Every parent feels they're not doing a great job, and every
Yeah.
parent feels they're inadequate, and that how are my kids going to turn out? Oh my God! And even all the parents who have faith, it's still hard, right? So the purpose behind writing the book was to encourage them and inspire them that the things you're pouring into your children, no matter what it looks like now, they will all take root, and eventually they will succeed and survive, and they will look back and thank you, even though it may be tough right now. Because here's my mother having raised 7 children, and they've all went on to do great things against impossible odds because of God's faithfulness. So it's a story of inspiration. It's a story that will bring people hope, and that was why I wrote it, because of all these things I went through. And then to show people this is what God can do in the
Yeah.
worst of the situations.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit more about your mom. What is one of your favorite memories as a little boy?
My favorite memory is probably, and we are connected in the spirit through music. So my mother was a very passionate woman. In Mexico, they call it like simpatico. She's just had the biggest heart of anyone I knew. She was the most soulful person of anyone I knew. But she loved music like life itself. And so she lived a lot of her life through the power of songs. So she would put on certain songs, and that would be how she felt. And she would put on like Fred Astaire, Something Gotta Give, or she would put on Frank Sinatra, High Hopes, and then she would preach that to me. You know, you got to have high hopes and you got to have great expectations. And then she would play Frank Sinatra's Young at Heart. You know, fairy tales can't come true. It can happen to you if you're young at heart. So she put inside of me this dreamer like spirit. So she was a very exuberant woman, full of life, full of personality, full of joy, and full of faith. And but just had was tenacious as can be. But her dream was to become a movie star, and she was doing that in Mexico when she was 18, 17, 18. She was getting bit parts. And then she married the wrong guy, and life happened. So she was never able to live that dream out. But she was always championing my dream. And so for me, getting to live my dream was the way I could kind of say I was able to do it. She passed the hope of one generation on to the next. But she just was just full of heart. She was the kind of person that would just walk into a room and she would just light it up. You know, she just had this vivaciousness about her, and she was a very strong, encouraging person. But one of my favorite stories is one that happened a lot. Is that whenever my heart was broken when I was young, she would put on a song and she would dance with me to that song, and I'd be like, 7, 8, 9 years old, and she'd put on something like Glenn Miller's Moonlight Serenade, which was her favorite song. So there's almost nowhere where I can go in a restaurant. If I hear that song, I'll just feel her and I'll start weeping, because she's just connected to that song. And and then if something happened to me at school, or I never got the letter from my dad after sending letters, she would put on that Nat King Cole song called Smile. And then she would basically just dance with me, and I'd come up to her chest, and that's where I just felt her heartbeat, and I could look up into her eyes, and I could just feel this woman's warmth and love. And so that's, to me, like the things that I'll carry with me to the grave, like just the essence of her feeling of those songs, and those songs would be the way she would try to soothe my broken heart. And they're just very tender memories. And there's some of those in the book, and I won't give away what happens in the end. But it's a very powerful, evocative read, because my mother had this beautiful, tender heart, and her being the only influence I had, obviously I adopted her heart. I adopted her spirit
Yes.
of enthusiasm and her spirit of
Yes.
joy. I mean, when you meet me, you're meeting her. Those nice things you said about me in the intro, it's just I am my mother's son, and so she comes out in me. But one story that I did tell in the book that I'll share is that when I was young, she told me, she said, when you were born in the hospital, she said that there was a great bright light around you like a halo in the hospital room. And she goes, I saw it clear as day. And I knew then that God had set you apart for great works. And I used to think she was just telling me that to try to make me feel good because I was going through so many painful things as a young boy. But she goes, no, mijo, I wouldn't lie about that. She goes, I'm not saying you're an angel. I'm saying that God has a special light on you and he has set you apart for great things. So she filled my head with that. And she never recanted that to the day she passed away. She believed that that was what she saw. And so maybe in somewhere in me, well, it was true because God did set me apart for something to be a
Yeah.
light, and I've been a light for many people for 40 some years. And so that was but she also filled my head with the idea that I was set apart, that I was going to do great things, and despite what the circumstances look like, I was going to do something phantasmical with my life, which is the
Yeah.
word she used. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
so she was a precious woman.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I love that you said that in the book that she reached down and whispered something in your ear, and that was it. Tell us about that word. What?
Yeah. Well, it's so basically the backstory of that is that I was 7 years old.
Uh-huh.
Inside of me was a budding rock star. I had no idea I would be a musician, but I was drawn to music. I wanted to be different. And people that are artistic in nature, they want to dress different. We're peacocks. We want to be different because that's what makes you an artist, right? So
Right,
something
right.
in me at 7 wanted to be different. And so I asked her. She always wore these beautiful scarves, and she always looked very elegant. And so I said, Mama, you look like a movie star. Like I want to look like you. I want my school pictures are tomorrow. I don't want to look like plain. I want to look unique and special. Can I wear your scarf? And she's like, No, mijo, you can't wear my scarf. The boys will beat you up. This is the United States. They don't wear scarves. And I'm like, I don't care. Elvis wears a scarf. Tom Jones wears a scarf. And she finally relented. And then she knelt down beside me, tied her orange silk scarf around my neck, and then she whispered in my ear, she goes, one day, my precious son, you will do something phantasmical with your life. And the word phantasmical was sort of her Spanish mixture of fantastic and amazing. So she just kind of morphed them together, and it was like her own word. And it very much describes who she was and how she dreamed. She dreamed big, and she had this phantasmical, whimsical, dreamer-like spirit about her that she sort of imparted to me. And then I have remained the same. I'm literally the same 7-year-old kid on the cover of my book. I'm not any different. I'm just an older version, but I'm still dreaming big dreams. I'm still imagining incredible things. I'm still believing God can do the impossible at any given moment. And it's because of that word and what she decreed and literally prophesied over me.
Gosh, you're speaking into the hearts of all of us, but especially into the parents' hearts to speak that word into their children, to speak into them, to see what God has for them, and to know God well enough to know to speak that into the children. This is such a I don't know if you've ever done anything with parenting, or you need to write a book on that, Zora, with just speaking the word into your children like your mom did, because that was amazing. Is that why you called the book Maria's Scarf?
Yeah, I was praying to the Lord about a title, and I said, Lord, I want a title that is beautiful, that is short, that is poetic, and even mysterious. So when people see that Maria's scarf, the first thing you want to know is who's Maria?
Yes.
What is the scarf? What is the story with the scarf? And on the cover is a picture of my mother wearing a scarf when she was young in her heyday in Mexico. And then there's a picture of a 7-year-old boy wearing a scarf. So it makes you kind of go like, who is Maria? What is the scarf? What is the tie-in? And so God gave me the title Maria's Scarf, and it was so beautiful because the publisher, my publisher Blackstone, they told me, they said, we change titles that authors have for their books about 95 or 98% of the time. We change the titles. They go, once in a lifetime, once in a blue moon, a title comes along that we all just go, bam, that's it. And so I felt like that was a gift from God, that it was the title
Yeah.
that I wanted. It was short, it was quick, it was poetic and evocative. And speaking about the parenting thing, so yes, I speak at conferences all over the world, and I speak on the power of a mother's love, and I speak
Mhm.
on the 7 roles of a father. Because I didn't grow up with a father, I wanted more than anything to be a great father. And I made it, I had a long desire from when I was young that one day when I become a father, I'm going to become an amazing father because I'm going to do all the things for my children that my father never did for me. And then I'm also going to teach people, and I've spoken at a lot of women's conferences where I do this whole message on the power of a mother's love, and I go through all the different things. And I do other messages on the power of words. I have a very strong message on the power of words because I'm really a preacher and a teacher like Paul. I'm actually like five things. I'm like an evangelist like John. I'm a radical evangelist. I once bought 5,000 copies of The Purpose Driven Life and gave them all out one by one. I'm
Oh
a
my,
radical teacher like Paul, and I'm an encourager like Barnabas, wrapped up in a musician like David, but with the spirit of excellence of a Daniel. So it's all those characters are kind of me, and they morph in every day. They look different, but they're all ever present. But I got that from my mother, and the other reason why she was so important to me was that most kids grow up with uncles, aunts, grandparents, cousins, but our family was very unique in that I grew up with none of those people. Out of four possible grandparents, I grew up with none. No cousins. On my father's side, they were from Chicago. They wanted nothing to do with me. On my mother's side, they all lived in Mexico City. So I grew up with zero relatives other than a mother and siblings. And that's very uncommon. Most people say, oh, my uncle, my grandpa, and so this is why this family was so important to me, my family, my brothers and sisters. And you talked about that dedication in the front of the book that well, I guess you wanted to ask me something about that.
well, yes, I just love the way that you had divided it up, and I loved the future, but I'm gonna get to that in a minute. What I would like to do now is I would like to take just a minute and talk about, I would love to know how much, and I've read some of it, but for the sake of our audience, to just give them a few more teasers before they buy your book, about how much of your success did your mom see?
Oh, yes, she was very fortunate in that she got to see, like, a lot of it. When the book comes out in April 30th, it will have been 20 years since she passed, and some incredible things have happened in that past 20 years, but she got to see me become, whatever, a world-renowned drummer, as they call me, or one of the world's greatest R&B drummers, the title I was given, and many readers polls. Yeah, she got to see all that. She got to see me on television all the time. She got to see me become a teen star in all the magazines. She used to, towards the end of her life, she would always, any magazine I was in, I would send her, like if I was on the cover or if I was in Teen Beat and I was the centerfold, and she would take him to the doctor's office and she would go, oh, to the doctors, and she'd be dressed all to the nines just to go to the doctors because she always tried to look nice. And she'd go there and she'd go, this is my son, and she would take the magazines with her, and so that just always touched my heart. And before she passed, she was able to see that me and Lenny Kravitz were together on the cover of Modern Drummer magazine. So Modern Drummer is kind of like the biggest drum magazine in the United States. It's kind of like Golf Digest if you're a golfer or whatever your deal is. So she got to see a lot of things. She got to see my two children come into the world. They were little, but yeah, she didn't get to see some of the amazing things that's happened in the last 20 years, but she got to see her son go from the slums to the spotlight. And that
Wow.
was very special for me to have her to see it because it was my way of bringing her into that world that
Yeah.
she was a part of when she was young, but she never got to live that out. So she
Yeah.
got to kind of live through it with me. But man, she was a special person.
Oh my gosh, and so are you, my friend, so are you. Could you give us a snapshot? We're already at 23 minutes, but I know I can hear from my audience saying, "But we don't know how he got to be, into the spotlight." Can you just give us a
Yeah.
short of how what
Yeah.
that looked like?
Yeah, so I didn't get to start playing drums. I always wanted to play since I was born. As long as I can remember, I wanted to play. But every year from the fourth grade on, I was rejected from the school band program. I was told there were too many drummers, so that there wasn't any room for me. So there was no room at the inn, and I just kept dreaming of doing it one day. Finally, I'm 16. I'm in high school, and I take an after-school 2-hour job. The only job they can find for me is I'm the janitor at my own high school. So now I'm the kid vacuuming and cleaning the toilets in front of all the kids there doing activities after school. So it was a very embarrassing, humbling job, but I took it anyway because I needed the money. And my mother said, just always do a good job wherever you're at. and God will elevate you. So at any rate, I took the job. At the end of the 2 hours, my job was to clean the band room. So I would clean the band room, and as part of that, no one was ever there. I would save the last 10 minutes, and I would sneak on the drum set there and play. And there were sticks there, and I never played before, but God just gave me a gift. From day one, I could play. I wasn't great, but I had ability, a natural ability.
Mhm.
And then the band director was hiding, not hiding, but he was in his office closed, came out, startled me. I said, "Wait right here, kid." I thought he was going to get my boss and fire me. Instead, he brings another guy and he says, "Play like you did again." I played, and then they look at each other and he goes, "Kid, you have a tremendous gift." He goes, "We need you in the stage band, the jazz band, the marching band, the swing choir." So I got in all the school band programs in my junior year because I was the janitor at my high school. So that's how God used that lowly position and job to elevate me. And that became the turning point and catalyst for my life. Then from there, I wound up with a cover band down in California and back in LA. And the band fell apart. But that brought me down to LA, started hustling, and some divine appointments happened with some incredible people. And before you know it, a month later, I'm meeting Michael Jackson and the Jackson Five, and incredible. And I'm meeting the world's greatest drummer, Buddy Rich. It's like my life is like Rudy, Rocky, The Blind Side meets Forrest Gump. You know how Forrest was always in these amazing things. Like in my life, I've been honored at the White House. I've traveled with the fourth richest guy in the world, Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft. I've hung out with Michael, the biggest people in the world and the lowest people. But I've been the same guy. But it's like Forrest. None of these things were supposed to happen to Forrest, but
Right.
they did. And so that's me. I'm like the real living Forrest Gump. And then I just worked really hard, and people began recommending me for different auditions. Lenny Kravitz got me an audition. He was just a young kid himself. He got me an audition with the New Edition. He auditioned in guitar, didn't get the gig, but I got the gig on drums, and my career started because that was like the thing that put me on the map. It was global, and then from there, everybody just started calling, and I couldn't do all the gigs that I was getting called to do. You know,
Wow.
I had to turn down so many because you can only be in one tour at a time.
Right.
It's just God's hand, His providential. I always say it's a combination. The Holy Spirit is the helper, not the doer. So I have labored intensely hard in my life. I've been working hard since I was 7, still working hard. And we are co-laborers with Christ. There's
Yeah.
the part that He already did. He gave us the gifts and talents. And then there's our part, which is cultivating and turning them into something and ultimately serving His kingdom and making people's lives better because of it. But that's how I've rolled.
So you are absolutely amazing. I just can't. I feel like sometimes that God must just look at your mom and say, "Come over here. I want you to just peek through all these clouds and just see the incredible son that you birthed." You just touch my heart.
Thank you so much, and, you're making me get teary-eyed too. It's just beautiful, like, there's nothing more powerful on this earth in a physical form than the power of a mother's love. There's nothing. That's a bit of God Himself poured into a mother. And the fathers
Right.
are different. They don't have the same thing, but there's nothing comparable to a mother's love. And that is what I wanted to write about. And I wanted to. The story is a mother and son story of love, a family's story of perseverance in this unbreakable bond, and a starry-eyed kid with a dream who refused to give up. And
Yeah.
God worked in all of the soil of those situations and did impossible things. So my story is a story of hope for everybody and to inspire people to keep dreaming.
It truly is, and I love, and for our audience, these are the last words, when Zorro talks about his future, he says, his motivation for writing this book that you're going to order, I know that you are, for completing the book, was to inspire all the dreamers of the world to keep dreaming and reaching for the stars. His charge to us is to believe that all things are possible, do the work, be brave, walk by faith, and never, ever give up. Zorro, what a delight it was to have you on the show. What a delight it was when I turned that corner and saw you sitting there. I just adore you, and I just thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Kim. It's been an honor and a privilege to be on your show. And it was a divine appointment that we met. That's just God orchestrating our paths. We won't know until we get to heaven. Does an angel push us and make us turn a certain way? Like, how do these divine appointments happen? But we walk by His presence, right? And He directs our footsteps. So that must be how He does it. He gets you to turn a corner, and I meet you.
And there we go. And I want you to know it wasn't that you met all these other people. It was that they had the privilege and honor to meet you. So thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
I hope maybe we'll do a follow-up one day.
I
How
would
about
love to. We're just getting started. We have
let's
so
do
much more to
it.
talk about.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank
Love
you,
you
and
so
God
much.
bless. Thank you for the privilege. I love you too.
Bye-bye. Well, friends, there you go. Very few interviews bring me to tears, but I will tell you what, that one did. I think why is because just the heart of a son who is doing all that he can to honor his mom. Oh, what a beautiful legacy, don't you think? And to think about what he's accomplished through his hard work. And I'm sure that he will continue. I'm sure this man does this every day, working hard to complete the calling on his life, which each and every one of us have the privilege to do. So whatever it is God has called you to do, in whatever field it is, do as Zoro says, give it to as unto the Lord. Do the hard work and never ever give up. Thank you so much for joining me right here on Coffee. Man, what a great conversation we had today. And now you get to continue the conversation because many people need to hear the things that you have to say to encourage them. Until next time, my friends, big love to everybody. Bye, everybody.